Joining us now, TSN hockey analyst, former Vancouver Canuck, Mr. Frank Corrado. And Frankie, PD got it going last night, 3-point night. His wingers were Nils Höglander and Connor Garland. We're asking on our Tim Hortons poll question, are those the right guys, the best winger options to play with Elias Pettersson on this team?
I mean, if you're going to get the results, then they're the best options. I mean, you tinker with things. I always find it interesting, though, when the Canucks lines come out and you see Pettersson and you see the names next to him. And it's been like this a lot this year, whether it was Mikheyev and Kuzmenko or, last night you see Garland and Höglander. You're like, man, he's got to do a lot. Like he's got to do a lot, which is expected because he gets paid a lot of money now. He's going to get paid a lot of money in the future. He's obviously the centerpiece of the team up front. But I mean, it's not like he has a 1B kind of winger with him. He's got guys that are good players, but he doesn't have that elite winger, or it doesn't seem like he does. I've really liked the way Nils Höglander has played, though. Like I think he's really playing himself into a guy that can be utilized in the higher in the lineup and get some results and some production, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know, like he doesn't get Draisaitl the way McDavid does. He doesn't get Marner the way Matthew does. Like, go down the list. Like
he doesn't even get Besser. He doesn't get Besser like Miller does.
He's got to do a lot of heavy lifting, man.
Yeah.
He's got to do a lot of heavy lifting. So it makes it even more impressive, the season he's had and the back-to-back seasons that he's had.
I have in the back of my mind that he is, and he's not coasting, but that he knows they're going to the playoffs and he wants to make sure that he's got his game for the playoffs, that he's waiting to flick the switch because he's waited this long for playoff hockey and he doesn't want to waste his energy.
Yeah, you know what? There's I don't know if you flick a switch. Like I get the sentiment there. It is hard though. It's hard just because the calendar kind of flips to the middle of April and things, the schedule changes. It's like now I'm really going to turn it on. I think mentally as players, there's something that happens where you're like, now I'm in playoff mode. So you can get yourself there mentally. But I think sometimes like your game just has to have that momentum building through where it's like instinctual and you're just playing and you're not thinking about that kind of stuff. But I even think, like, to your point, the bigger thing for Petey, and this has always been the case, when he's at full health, man, he's a different player, isn't he? Like when there's no wrist issues, when there's no, talk about maybe it's a groin, maybe there's something lingering. Like when he is feeling 105%, let's say, he is exceptionally dynamic and he does things that he can't do otherwise. So to your point there, like maybe coming down the stretch here, it's a little bit of, we're in a great spot here coming into the playoffs. I want to play well, but most importantly, got an opportunity to play some playoff hockey here, which is really cool. And him being at 100% is a big time difference maker for the team in the playoffs. There's no sense in having a guy who's a little banged up going into the playoffs.
Alvin has messaged this week that, hey, all this is new for us. We haven't played a lot of playoff games, let alone even meaningful games in March. How much do you think playoff experience matters?
It does matter to a degree. When I think it really matters, when you lose that momentum, how do you get it back? And more importantly, how do you not let that happen? Like, I always think with playoff hockey, whether you've played it or you've watched it for a long time, it seems like there can be a minuscule thing that you say, okay, that's not a big deal. They should be able to get it on track after that. Meanwhile, that turns into something that cascades into more. And it's that kind of recognition that I think the reps and the experience and the years in the playoffs, like that's where that'll really pay off. But there is also something to be said for, we're kind of new at this, we're naive, and we're going to be, brash about how the way we do things, and we're just going to play. And there's something freeing about that as well, where you don't overthink things, you don't overanalyze the game. So yes, the experience is important when it comes to recognize the certain cues and moments in a game where, hey, maybe it's slipping away, or maybe this is a situation where I could have just bide my time or live to fight another day. But I love that mentality of, we're just going to go play, and we're going to play free, and we're just going to let it fly. And they have a lot of good players that can do that within reason, of course, like still being responsible when you play that way.
It's we've been prefacing a lot of our criticisms in the last couple of weeks by saying, folks, we realize they're a first place team, second in the league right now. And yet, this is what good teams do, is they fine tune. The last two games, they've blown leads. They came really close to blowing the lead last night as well. What do you think is up with that? Is that again dog? Like, you can blame a lot of the Canucks problems right now on the part of the calendar here, dog days, being on top for as long as they have, and yet it seems really tenuous when they play with a lead right now.
And you know what? That's not just Vancouver. That is not exclusive to this team. This happens everywhere around the league. Like, if you pay attention to all the different teams and what they've gone through, everyone is blowing leads right now, or coming close to maybe blowing a lead. It's just, it's okay from a micro point of view. I watch the game now, and I think it's harder to defend because guys can't cross check and box out the way they used to. So it's easier for guys to get to the net in the scoring positions. And you also have to think that as the game goes on, and if your team is down and you're pressing more, your urgency to go to the net and get to that area, like, it kicks in a little more. So now you're getting there with a little more ease. That's kind of what I see on on a micro level, but more on the bigger picture. It's just the goal scorers are better than they ever have been. There's more skill than there's ever been on the ice, and we're living in a little bit of an era here where teams can blow leads pretty easily. Like, I was doing the panel last night on TSN for the Leaf game. It was 3-0 Philly, and sure enough, it's like Leafs made a game of it. Philly scores, late in the game to make it 4-2, but I was like, the Leafs played for 15 minutes of that game. We had, we got to the point where there was 5 minutes left in the third period, and you could say that they played for 15 minutes and they made a game of it. And you're like, man, they can win.
The Sabres are outshot 2-1, and same thing.
It's not just Vancouver; it's everyone.
Yeah, I understand you'll be taking up Quinn Hughes's case for an upcoming TSN debate. We'll save that, Hughes versus Makar. But what did you make of the hit on Olofsson last night?
Dude, you know what? Watch out. Watch out when Quinn Hughes is on the ice. I love the progression in everything that Quinn Hughes has done this year. And it's so funny looking back at some of the narratives maybe coming into the year. It's like, well, he can't defend. Actually, he defends quite well. You know why? Because he skates better than basically everyone on the ice. And he defends well. He's obviously very competitive. Like, you just can't be that good of a player. You can't be that much of an impact player without being super ultra competitive as a guy. You get an opportunity to lay a hit like that. I thought it was beautiful. Like, well done. Is there anything this guy can't do? Like, what do we need him to sort out the French fry situation on the concourse? Maybe.
He's so solid on his skates, though. It would make sense that, he's obviously not big, but it would make sense that he could hit. He's so solid on his skates.
Yeah. That's exactly it. When you have that kind of base and he never seems like he's off balance, and think about the stuff that he does on any given night, you're like, holy smokes, man. Like, some of the stuff he does between him and Makar, okay, they do stuff that other defensemen might do one every couple games. Like, it just doesn't happen that often. Even like the really good D-men that we see around the league, it's like they do it every shift. They do it multiple times a period. We're living in an era as well with these two guys where it's like, what can't they do? And Quinn Hughes laying a big hit last night. It's just a little reminder that, like, yeah, this guy, he can do a little bit of everything. I wouldn't recommend he starts looking for big hits, obviously, but
no.
It was pretty cool to see.
Well, you got to the bigger story here, Frank, and
we're gonna go Frygate with him.
Well, we know how much the Corrado family values food, Blake. Do you not remember the best sauce that Nona Sal used to send us? If you're paying $6 for fries, how many fries should you get, Frank?
$7.99.
$7.99. Here's the thing. If you're paying $7.99 for fries, it shouldn't be an amount that you should be able to count quickly. You know what I mean? Like,
It's true.
it just shouldn't be like, oh, there's 15. You can't be looking down at it and say there's 15 fries. Like, it should just be a good portion.
Mhm.
I don't know. Do you know what that reminded me of? Did you ever watch that thing on Netflix about the fire festival? And they had that
Yes.
sandwich with the with the piece of cheese on it and the white bread. That's what it kind of reminded me of.
That's
Not
a really good
one.
call. That's a really good call. Those are fire fresh fries. Absolutely.
Yes.
Say
Yeah.
that 3 times quickly. Talking praise Mikheyev last night, says he's hounding pucks, he's chasing pucks down, that's more his game, and frankly he has been more noticeable of late. What have you seen of your old team?
That looked like Maple Leaf Mikheyev. Is that Maple Leaf Mikheyev?
Yeah,
that's exactly at his. He missed so many chances when he played for the Leafs. Like, he would get so many breakaways. He would beat guys wide all the time. He'd miss those chances. But at least if he wasn't getting scoring on those chances, at least he was hard to play against because he was really fast. He was hounding pucks. He was a great forechecker. So that should be the bare minimum that he gives you. And you have to go back to the ACL. Like, you always have to when you talk about it. Like, he came back pretty much on time, maybe a little earlier than people would have expected. But coming back from an ACL is not easy. Ask Connor Brown how he's doing coming back from his ACL. And when your feet and your legs are your money makers, it becomes even harder, because now all of a sudden you're not a guy that thinks the game. You're a guy that skates the game. And for him to be turning a corner here and finding that extra gear that he has and utilizing that's a big deal, because regardless of how much a player makes, when we get into playoff time, as long as they're bringing that one thing that really is their separator, if they're bringing that to the table, then now you have your roles on your team, and you have your guys that bring you those different elements, and that's a good sign for him, and it's a good sign for the team.
You done a lot of Montreal games this season. They were game last night in Edmonton against a red-hot Oiler team. What should the Canucks expect out of Montreal? Did they spend all their money last night in Edmonton? Do they have anything left here as they arrive in Vancouver?
I would say for the majority of the games with Montreal this year, they have no quit. They compete. They're in every game, and they're not an easy out. They've had the outlier, and there's a chance that could happen against Vancouver where they get blown out. Like, I watched them lose 7-2 to St. Louis one night on home ice, and it's just one of those nights. But they're just not an easy out. They stay in every game. And I give them a lot of credit for actually coming back in that game, because you think, like, Montreal, they are who they are in the standings. You go down 2 to Edmonton Edmonton, it's like that could turn into a 4-0 game pretty quickly, and that has happened to them this year. But that's just they've kind of embodied Marty St. Louis' whole persona, where it's scrappy underdog mentality, never quit. And even being around the room and talking to some of the guys after morning skate, they love it. Like, they've taken a lot of pride in being this team that's not an easy out, and they're always in the fight. And sometimes they don't win the fight, but they're in it a lot. So for Vancouver, if you're looking at it as this is going to be a team that's going to roll in here and we're going to pedal to the metal, beat them easily, it's unlikely to be the case. It can happen, but they've been scrappy all year long.
Canucks have not been in a postseason in 4 years, Frank, and that was the expanded bubble field of 2020. Haven't earned their way to the Stanley Cup playoffs in 9 years. We were talking earlier in the week. Should Canucks fans be happy just making it, or because of the season they have is their expectation on the group?
They should be happy to make it, for sure. And I think everything that has happened in the regular season here, them being in first place in the league for a long time, like, that's all gravy. That's all bonus points. And I don't know how you guys feel about this when it comes to teams that have postseason success. Like Florida, they win the President's Trophy 2 seasons ago. They fizzle out to Tampa Bay. Last year, they go all the way to the finals. It feels like the teams that are having the success in the postseason are the teams that have been kind of knocking on the door. Like, Vegas has been knocking on the door. Boston's there every year. Carolina's knocking on the door every year. Edmonton, like, So for Vancouver, they kind of are the new kids on the block. And there's teams that have kind of been there and they've gotten their toe in the door and they're trying to break it open. Vancouver's not quite there yet. Like they're trying to be the team that kind of gets their foot in the door. And if they can, if they can make some headway here in their first time in the playoffs in a long time, I think that's bonus as well. Because you're talking about you're in the mix with a lot of teams that have had this group together going, playoffs after playoffs after playoffs. Vancouver's not that team. So I think to a degree, you should be satisfied with the fact that they are there. And, and anything that comes after this is bonus points for me.
Speaking of bonus, and I know it's a bit of a punchline, but it's there for you. Do you want to win the President's Trophy? Would anybody bring that up in the room of, in the final week, if they're 1 point ahead, 1 point back? Like, do they care at all?
I don't know. I don't think the President's Trophy is that big of a deal, which, you like if you follow soccer, which you do, it's like you win a regular season. That's a big deal.
I mean,
right?
Yeah.
In Europe, that's massive. Sometimes winning the regular season is bigger than winning the playoffs, which is totally different than how we do things here with hockey. But it's just like, when's the last time a team won? I think it was 2012, 2013 when a team won the President's Trophy and then won the Stanley Cup, and I think that was Chicago. So it has been a bit of a curse. But I don't think that's something that really gets talked about. I think it's more about the process of making sure that your game is in order and everyone's doing the things that they need to do in order to have some playoff success.
It was that Hawks team. Vegas, they going to make it?
Oh,
yes. They will make the playoffs. I can't see a situation where they don't make the playoffs. It's just, when does everyone come back? Like, when do they actually get the reinforcements? Because this Vegas team that's playing right now is vastly different than the Vegas team that could be playing game one of the playoffs if, salary cap is finished and everyone's back from LTIR. They just need to tread water just enough here. But I can't see a world where Vegas misses the playoffs. I know it's close. I get that. But I don't know. Like, they're 3 points up on Mini. They've got a game in hand. I can't see them missing the playoffs. Can you?
They're probably fine. They're probably, it's not like the Wild or the Blues really have much that you'd be like, yeah, but that team's, I mean, the Wild and the Blues are a very flawed team. So I wish there was a team that was just a little bit more exciting behind them that you could picture sort of a rally here. But you're right. If you're 3 points up, you got a game in hand, you're probably okay.
You should be. But with that being said, like, it does add some intrigue to what that first round matchup would look like. Like what does Vancouver versus Vegas look like if this is the Vegas team that they're going to play? Like, that's, I mean, it's stating the obvious, but Vancouver would love that matchup and they would probably eat that team alive. But if it's different, if, Stone is back and Hurdle's playing, and like, what a waste it would be if they actually missed the playoffs and they made all these moves and you get Noah Hannafin. Like, it would be such a waste.
Yeah.
It would be glorious. Speaking for the ABV crowd.
Yeah.
Frankie, thank you for this. We'll let you get back to the Twins and catch up next week.
All right, boys. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.